Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambeau channel. An attorney within the XRP community has uncovered a very old video in which an SEC commissioner is making the case that that Bitcoin can be, under certain circumstances, considered a security. And this is completely relevant to what's happening in the case of the SEC going after Ripple, claiming that XRP itself, just by the nature of it existing, is a security. And so this is amazing to me. It's Joseph Grundfest, a former commissioner. That's who was speaking in this video. And I went ahead and transcribed myself most of what he said so that I could just kind of go through it and then share thoughts along the way here. Because, look, let me show you something here at the outset. Because, look, even before going into the specifics of his comments, let me share with you a little something here. And this really strikes to the heart of it. Like, you can articulate a position in which Bitcoin is a security, as Grundfest did in this video, which I'm about to show you. And you can use that argument to shut down Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in the United States. That could be done if people in power wish to shoehorn Bitcoin into an existing regulatory framework which was never created with it in mind. It can be done if those in power simply don't want Bitcoin and crypto adoption in the United States for any number of reasons. If those in power don't want the technology in the United States, they can fight it by insisting it be judged and regulated within the existing regulatory framework. Or the SEC could realize, yes, Bitcoin does look like a security under the existing regulatory framework, and then realize this is an indication that the laws need to change, because the laws should not make any cryptocurrency simply by the nature of it existing be defined as a security. And so, unfortunately, that's what's happening here. That's the claim that's being put forth again, that Ripple has sold XRP as a security. This should not be the case. And so here's the honest truth of this all. If you want to properly enforce the law that's on the books, then cryptocurrencies in the United States, all of them, should not be allowed to proliferate in the way that they are. They should not have the level of adoption that they have. Bitcoin, with just the fact that they're miners, so you've got a common enterprise there. Like, Bitcoin itself, if you're going to go to the letter of the law here, Bitcoin should not be in the United States, nor should any altcoin, including XRP. That's the truth of the matter. And that's stupid, right? And the reason that's the case is because the existing regulatory framework never had blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies in mind. And so now we find that this animal just can't meet these definitions. And so what are we going to do it down? Because our existing, almost 100-year-old legal framework, it can't fit neatly in that, so we just abandon all cryptocurrencies? Well, that's not what the rest of the world is doing here. But that's what's happening here. The SEC, if they don't change the way they're approaching this, then nothing fits. It's either that, or you get something which is even more outrageous, well, maybe not more outrageous, but certainly outrageous, selective enforcement. Because that's what we're seeing right now. You're seeing, for whatever the reasons are, you're seeing Bitcoin and Ethereum get preferential treatment. And I understand that there's nothing that's legally binding about what anyone in the SEC has said, but it has been verbally stated by high-ups, and, to save face, I doubt they're going to go back on it. They could. Like, I still think, look, fine, the Ethereum Foundation could be at risk. I'm just saying the fact that higher-ups in the past have verbally stated it's safe, I'm less convinced that they're going to. But everything else, my gosh, you got a target on your back, don't you think here? And so check this out. And by the way, I'll just pull up in case you want to see. So this is Joseph Grundfest, former SEC commissioner. And he was interviewed by this YouTube channel, Stanford Law School. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with Stanford, very famous university in the United States, Ivy League status here. And so this is their YouTube channel. They got Grundfest on here. And I think he may be a professor or have some sort of association with the Stanford Law School. I can't remember. It may state. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for the sake of this video. But this video was published on July 8th, 2015. And considering how important this is, it's amazing that almost no humans in the planet, in the world of crypto, have seen this. It's got 5,328 views. Okay? Now, considering how important this is, even back then, like, that's nothing. That is not good. And so check this out. Let me share with you some of what he had to say and break this down a little bit further here, because this is absolutely crucial to what's happening with the case, with the SEC going after Ripple. Nobody was thinking about Bitcoin when they came up with the definition of the term security, but there she is. That's the definition. You're gonna have to learn to work with that. You can't make Bitcoin go away. How are we gonna have these two regimes communicate? Sometimes Bitcoin can be a security, and sometimes it won't be a security. You haven't had any court, you haven't had the SEC take a position with regard to whether Bitcoin itself is a security or not. And by the way, think about that. So that's middle of 2015. We're approaching the middle of 2021. We still don't have that clarity. And he is acknowledging here that, when Bitcoin was created, when the existing laws were created, it wasn't with Bitcoin in mind. So he's acknowledging something I've been saying on this channel for multiple years at this point, which is you cannot shoehorn the cryptocurrencies into this existing regulatory framework. It gets messy and it doesn't work. Everything falls apart. It does not make sense when you try and do this. Anyway, Joseph Grundfest continues. He wrote, and actually, before I forget, I meant to give credit where it's due. It was attorney John Deaton who posted this, and this is how I came across this, and he wrote the following. Why the crypto community should pay close attention to the SEC versus Ripple. Watch the 4-minute video of former SEC Commissioner Joseph Grundfest. Ironically, it was Grundfest that sent the letter to Clayton warning him to not file the case. And so we're talking about, he's referencing Jay Clayton, the last SEC chair. And I'm not going to go through this article, I fully covered this, but I will share this quote. And this is a quote from what Joseph Grundfest wrote to Jay Clayton. Here's a snippet from it. Here's the quote. No pressing reason compels immediate enforcement action. And so here you go. He was highlighting this is the tail end of your time here at the SEC. There's a new there's incoming administration. There's no compelling reason to do this. And that was just one of the things that he cited. But Joseph Grundfest, I think he's a sharp guy. Having listened to him here, this is the first time I saw him be interviewed in any capacity. And he came out and said, this doesn't make sense what you're doing in attacking Ripple and XRP. And here, even with what you say, like understand as I go through it, you might think that this guy was anti-Bitcoin. You know what he was actually doing though? He was applying the laws from the SEC as written. He's doing his job here in analyzing this. He's actually right. And that's the scary thing, is that Bitcoin does fit into the framework of what a security is under certain circumstances. It does. And that's why I'm saying, so the fact that's the case should be an indication that we've got law that doesn't suit what's going on here in the world of cryptocurrency. That should be a red flag right there for everybody at the SEC, but they're pretending that's not the case, even in 2021. That's the reason that we have this problem. Anyway, he continues though. We know that if you have a partnership and the partnership buys Bitcoin, then the partnership can be exactly like a partnership that buys a horse. And in that situation, your interest in the partnership that owns the Bitcoin, that's a security. That's not complicated at all. Yeah, and so so just understand, like anything that's sold. Maybe that's too strong. If something's sold, and there's a common enterprise, you're relying on the value of something to increase something that you own, you hold. That can certainly in and of itself be there are other things to consider, but that can be a consideration. That is a consideration in determining whether or not something actually is a security. And so that's effectively what he's getting at there. And so he writes, or he says again, and in that situation, your interest in the partnership that owns the Bitcoin, that's a security. That's not complicated at all. Okay. And then he continues. But the more interesting question that the courts and the SEC haven't yet looked at is the challenge of whether the Bitcoin itself is a security. And there the answer, I think, is a resounding sometimes. Well, how about that? And here's the thing. I think he's, if you apply this to the existing regulatory framework, I think he's right. Sometimes Bitcoin is a security, but that's stupid. It shouldn't be regulated as a security. That means that it doesn't line up. It just gets messy because you're putting this new technology into this legal framework that couldn't have fathomed that something like this could exist. That's the reason it's happening. So anyway, but he's right. He's not like some, just for the sake of an anti-crypto guy. I don't get that sense from him at all. He's just applying the letter of the law effectively here. And he's just thinking through it logically. So he continues. Check this out. Now I think the SEC hasn't taken a position on it yet because it doesn't have to. Well, there we go. And what have we been saying about Ripple's fair notice argument? This idea that if they were doing something wrong, especially given that they were for a long time having weekly communication with the SEC, the idea that the SEC did nothing wrong by just allowing them to go, like, that's crazy. The SEC absolutely should have provided notice a long time ago that Ripple was doing something wrong. And here you have a former commissioner saying, of course they're aware of this, but why? So why aren't they taking action? Because they don't yet have to. Look, the asset class was way smaller back then. It's their laziness, their apathy that led to this situation, and then they have the gall to come after Ripple. It's disgusting. That's exactly what happened here. Anyway, he continues. All the problems that the SEC has run into up to this point, they've been able to handle all of those issues within the four corners of existing precedent. So what's he talking about there? He's talking about the Howie test right now, because there are 4 prongs to the Howie test. And what he's saying there is that every case that they've, in instances that they've engaged in enforcement, those were instances where actually it was clear, like the existing regulatory framework for those instances wasn't messy. But the problem is there are instances where it gets very messy, as you'll see as I go through this further. But yeah, I will acknowledge too. Yeah, of course, there are some instances where if you just look on the surface of it, it is pretty clear that it fits within that guideline. And even in some of those instances, it doesn't mean that the asset itself is a security. But for every other situation where it's not as clear, this is why I'm saying, even though in those situations it'll be the same in terms of, yeah, it looks like a security, but still I keep going back to, that means there's a problem with the regulatory framework, not the digital assets existing in general. Right? And so then he continues here. Nothing has forced the SEC to carefully and aggressively address the more difficult question of whether and when Bitcoin is a security. To determine whether let me pause right there. And so think about this also. The SEC is claiming that Ripple and Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larson should have known all along that what they were doing was wrong. And here is a firm acknowledgement from a former SEC commissioner that even the SEC didn't know what the hell this was because they haven't been forced to provide that clarity. But now they're pretending that there's been clarity all along and they should have acted within the law. No. That is BS, and that is freaking offensive. I don't appreciate that at all. Anyway, so Grundfest continues here now. Where was I? I think it was this part right here. Nothing is, so this, I think this is the last sentence I read. Nothing has forced the SEC to carefully and aggressively address the more difficult question of whether and when Bitcoin is a security. Yeah, okay. To determine whether Bitcoin is or isn't a security, you apply what lawyers call the investment contract test. And so, guys, right here, this is the Howie test, and here's how he describes it. So this is him again now. Is there an investment of money? Is there an expectation of profits? Is there something that's called commonality? And are you relying on the efforts of others? Well, when you use Bitcoin to buy a cup of coffee on campus here at Coupa Cafe, so mind you, he's speaking here on Stanford's campus. When you use Bitcoin to buy a cup of coffee on campus here at Coupa Cafe, there's no expectation of profit. You're not relying on the efforts of others for a return. There's nothing that the lawyers call commonality. So when you use Bitcoin for a cup of coffee, that's not a securities transaction, and that's not a security. Well, hey, right there, we can agree on that at least, right? That actually does seem pretty damn clear. So there'll be instances where, and he was even recognizing back then in 2015, instances where, yeah, something doesn't look like a security. And so but see, look at what we're saying right here, because mind you, The SEC today is saying that XRP, by the nature of its own existence, is a security. Well, can you imagine applying that to Bitcoin? By the nature of its existence, it is a security? Because look, XRP can be used to buy stuff. People actually do use XRP to buy stuff. That's not a securities transaction. The SEC says it is. The SEC today says that it is. That is nonsense. And so, like, even, look, this is why I've been saying for some time, like, I don't have a legal background of any kind at all. But even just applying simple logic would tell a layperson, this does not make a damn bit of sense, which is the reason that the SEC is going to be using their Chewbacca defense during their case against Ripple. That's what they're going to do. Like, why is a Wookiee living on Endor? It does not make sense. Really grinds my gears, guys. But then on the flip side, so check this out, because there are instances where, as you're about to see, he says Bitcoin absolutely could be a security or sold as a security, offered as a security. So check this out. And he said, so the securities laws would have nothing to do with that, referencing like the sale of a coffee, right, with using Bitcoin to purchase it. But on the other hand, suppose you go on the internet and you buy $200,000 of Bitcoin and you stick it in your electronic wallet and you're going to hold it for 4 or 5 years, thinking that Bitcoin will double or triple. Well, under those circumstances, it's very easy to describe that transaction as involving the purchase or sale of a security. Oh my gosh, Bitcoin as a security? So he continues here. You got investment of money. You've got an expectation of profit. You're relying on the efforts of others. The others here are the miners that, in effect, have to operate the Bitcoin system in order to validate every transactions. We know that we can package interests in Bitcoin so that those investments are securities. That's easy. But the interesting question is, and the law hasn't gotten here yet, is Bitcoin itself a security? And there we go. And we're at the core here. And this is what I'm talking about. So why, with these massive mining pools and such, why doesn't that represent an offering of a security? And so that gets awfully messy because there's all sorts of miners the world over, so it's just the ones in the United States doing it. And then once that Bitcoin's out into the wild, how many times does it have to transfer before it's no longer security, if it's no longer security at some point in the future? And it gets so messy and so convoluted. And this is an indication that your stupid laws can't handle the cryptocurrency asset class. You need to provide new, sufficient regulatory clarity, and you're not doing it. This is the core problem right here. Of course, cryptocurrencies in and of themselves are not securities. Are oranges securities? Think back to the Howie test. It was about orange groves. No, oranges are not securities. That's stupid. STOOPID. Stupid. Really grinds my gears, guys. And so here you go. It's great seeing this revealed, seeing this video unearthed. I never would have ever come across this if not for attorney John Deaton. So clearly he's been doing some digging here. Now this has been truly fascinating. So, like, again, it doesn't take somebody with a legal background to understand these simple logical problems that they're running into here. And so what's ultimately going to happen? To this point, I'm not seeing indication that the SEC is going to recognize the core problem. I hope they do, but they're not recognizing the core problem, which is that their stupid laws, as perfectly as they've worked without cryptocurrencies existed for the better part of a century, they don't work now. They currently don't work. They don't fit because there's too many different scenarios that can splinter off where you have too many question marks about how it could possibly apply. And then you get into selective enforcement and favoritism. And so the only way to eliminate that is to provide clarity outside of what has been practiced for the last century, because it just doesn't apply to crypto. And part of that is going to have to be the underlying asset itself for any cryptocurrency, by the nature of it existing, is not a security. That has to be part of it. It has to be. I mean, unless you don't, if you're not interested in providing that level of clarity, then you don't have to. But that's the only answer. It has to be the way in which these assets are utilized. If there's any sort of infringements there, in terms of taking advantage of investors or this or that, okay, all well and good, fine, go do your stuff, SEC. But if you're not going to acknowledge this core thing, which frankly doesn't sound that hard to me, then you just don't care. You don't give a damn about the investors of XRP or anybody else in the crypto space, despite what your mission says you should be focusing on. So I'll wrap up there. I am not a financial advisor. Do not buy or sell anything because of anything that I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.